All right. And we are kicking things off with none other than Ryan Pitts. You may know who he is if you have ever seen any of the really cool strength training equipment that he makes with his own bare hands. Things like hammers. In fact, the end of the show, I'm going to ask him about getting one made for myself because I think I can't be the only one left out. I need those. I need a hammer. But we're going to have a really great chat today. It is going to be uh, into talking about his origin story, how he got into this very unique field that he's in, because I don't know too many other people who are doing what he's doing, hand making hardcore strength training equipment and doing so with some really serious flair. So in a moment, we're going to kick things off, and I will remind listeners, if they have not already, to go get my free 9-minute kettlebell and bodyweight challenge. It is, as the name implies, 9 minutes to do, and it's designed to be done in conjunction with your regular training as opposed to, instead of it. So you don't have to put your regular workouts to the side in order to gain all of the fantastic and fun-filled benefits from doing it. So stuff like crawling, loaded carries, stuff that don't really take a long time to learn, but have a huge impact on your overall strength. Sense of tied togetherness is a word that I hear a lot of people telling me very frequently from doing it, as well as just enjoyment from doing it, because nobody likes boring training. Let's be very honest. So if that sounds like something that you would be interested in and have not yet dived headfirst into, go to 9minutechallenge.com and you can get your own free copy. That is the number 9minutechallenge.com. So without further ado, Mr. Pitts, how are you doing?
I'm doing awesome, Alex. Thanks for having me. This is really awesome. I love reaching out and actually talking to people. It's not I don't get to do it a lot since a small town, and I'm always at the shop making things. So thank you very much.
Of course, of course. Yeah, I like it too. Of course, I'll email with people, I'll text with people. That's cool. But having the chance to actually speak to somebody quasi face to face, because obviously there's a screen between us right now.
Right.
It's makes all the difference in the world. It's like that's kind of what life is supposed to be like. It's supposed to be you interact with people, you have a good old time, and you get strong along the way. I think that's another important part. But
Absolutely.
you got that part in abundance, and you got a very interesting backstory. You sent me some great information on it, and I would be remiss if I did not try to needle you to share it with the rest of the audience because it's such a cool story. Again, it's funny to think like, okay, how do you get into the business of actually making equipment? And we're not talking about, like pulleys and, ropes and machines and stuff like that, but actual like hardcore strength training equipment. So what is your origin story? Everybody loves a superhero origin story. And as somebody who's making Thor's hammer has got to have the most epic and most ultimate of all origin stories. So please tell us a little bit about that. How did you become the guy that you are today, making these really cool pieces of equipment and blending your love of creating things with your own hands and strength training into one career?
Oh man, you kind of got my origin story, so help keep me on track because I've had my nose to the grindstone for 30 plus years and really haven't done much outreach. So we'll start with what I started with, and my love for training and physical empowerment was when I discovered my dad's 1957 Joe Weider lessons. There were these pamphlets, and along with those came this series of booklets on how to speak like a man and how to do all these kind of social things that at the time were for becoming a better man or a better person. Some of them are a little dated, but still cool nonetheless. Came with a couple magazines, Muscle Builder, and one other, Joe Weider's Training of the Stars thing. But those lessons, they were bright yellow. One was orange and green. And man, I saw those and did not really know what they were. I played sports, baseball, and other junior type things, but these lessons and the pictures of the guys on there were just incredible. So I dove into them. I opened it up and started doing these body weight exercises using books and chairs and broom handles. It was awesome. And I I really didn't have any coaching or pushing to do it. You know, my parents, as far as I remember, were never like physically active. They worked full-time jobs, so it was usually just me discovering things and then experimenting. So at the end of those 7 weeks, I mean, it's that thing where whoever's trained or picked up a weight, you feel that power of, whoa, I'm able to change myself. This is awesome. Especially at those years as a teenager, it was far out. I couldn't even put it into words. I just wanted more.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where it started, and it's never stopped.
It's such a cool thing when you think about it. Like as you put it, what I can just lift these weights and then just keep doing it, and the next thing I know, I look different, I feel different, I perform differently. It's like it's like one of my favorite statues. There's a guy, it's like chiseling himself. He's like creating himself, and that's essentially what strength training allows you to do. And I think one of the really great things about it that many people don't realize until maybe they're a little bit older, it's kind of like what you're describing, is that you have the ability to shape your life however you want. And it's easier, I think, to understand that from the physical side of things. Like, hey, if I do push-ups every day, now my chest is bigger and now my arms are a little bit bigger. And then you think, okay, well, what if I read every day? What if I apply myself in other ways every day? Then, the exact same thing starts to happen. And this is what I think is so fundamental about strength training, is that you can see how you can mold yourself. Now, when you sent me a great, like, kind of a mini biography earlier, and you talked too about you were doing other stuff too as a teenager. You had a paper route, which I think seems like it was very common in small town Iowa, because I've had Matt Fury on this show in the past, and
Oh, okay, yeah, yeah.
he's a legend in like everything, but he's also from a small town in Iowa, and he had a paper route
Yes.
when he was a youth. And he talks about that, how transformative that was for him as well. Like,
Oh
what
my gosh.
I want to hear about this, because I think my dad had one when he was a kid,
Right,
and
right.
it's like, but by the time I was a kid, it was like there was already like dudes in cars who would just drive through and throw it out. It was like, yeah, no more kids on bikes. So, how did that also help to kind of shape your development in terms of your obsession with strength and fitness?
For me, that was huge. I mean, I don't know. I've got several kids. How to even explain to them what that, what here? Okay, 11 years old is when I started my paper route. Now, this was a morning route. So at 11 years old, I had to get up every morning between 5 and 6 a.m. There was no day you didn't deliver. So this was 365.
Yeah,
Got on my bike and rode for countless miles and delivered these papers. So it definitely teaches work ethic, right? There's no saying no. I've got to do this. Was it a great time? No, no, but you had to do it. You signed on, and every morning you got up and you delivered the papers. And the more you go through that and overcome the I don't want to do this, and it just becomes that habit. Okay, now every morning I'm getting up early, I'm putting my papers over my shoulders, and I'm riding my bike for an hour to deliver these papers. More on Sunday, obviously, because the paper was heavier at that time, and maybe some listeners don't know that, but the Sunday paper was 4 or 5 times as thick, so I had to make several trips. But it was definitely work ethic. You became stronger because you pushed through not wanting to do it. Your legs ache, during the winter, you're getting frostbite, but you got to deliver the papers. You know what I mean? And I think that kind of mindset's missing, where it's just too easy to say no, or to blame it on something, or someone else say, oh, that's cruel. What do you mean? You got to do it. You just
exactly.
have to do it.
I like what you said about how, you get like this sort of a sense of responsibility too from a very young age. And this is a great example. There's a mix between the physical aspect of it, because you actually have to physically ride the bike, throw the papers, in some cases maybe make a few trips because your heavy day was Sunday, and so
Right,
that was the
right.
day where it weighed twice as much. And then there's also the mental side of things that are just kind of being married into it, where it's like, well, this is something I'm going to have to do every day. So rather than focusing, like a lot of people do in strength training, on like, okay, 3 months from now, I want to have gained, 5 pounds of muscle, and I want to be benching X amount or squatting Y amount, whatever it may be. It's like, all you can think about is, okay, I need to show up every day. do my job, be consistent. And so you start to learn the value of a routine and habits and other things like that that set you up later on in life for success in a variety of endeavors, strength training and otherwise. Did you find that this was the case for you as well, like with your schoolwork and with other things that you later pursued?
Absolutely, because I was already doing this thing, the paper route. And so from that came, okay, there's first I know if I'm going to accomplish something, I have to just do it. And again, in the 80s, there was no saying no to things or I don't want to do it or I don't like it. None of that mattered. You just did it and got it done. And the same with discovering those body weight lessons. Today, maybe people, it's when they start exercising, oh, it's uncomfortable or it doesn't feel good. And it won't when you're starting out. So you've got to do it, push through it, and enjoy the process. But without really having that mindset of sticking with something, you won't get, it's hard to get the results.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's interesting you point that out because it is a lot easier, it seems, nowadays to just say, I don't really want to do this, I don't want to do that. It's almost like there is, and in some sense, it's like you can kind of get away with it because again, things that are like a low level of commitment, but that people are still counting on you for, like to get their paper delivered or their lawn mowed and stuff like that. It's like now there are now professional services doing that, and so these sort of entry level things that could teach kids how to be consistent, how to have a good routine, how to build habits, how to work towards something. A lot of those are at least the traditional ones are kind of taken away, and the new opportunities parents just don't maybe have as much familiarity with. Like it could be, when I was when I was a teenager, my dad had me and my brother sell CDs online to teach us how to run a business essentially.
Nice. Yeah.
And so it was like, he would buy the CDs and then we would pay him just whatever he paid. And then we would, sell them at a slight markup and we'd have to ship them and everything like that. And so we got a cool lesson in this kind of a similar thing. It's like you owe it to this person who has paid you this money to send them the CD. So you have to go through and do X, Y, and Z. But yeah, like the lawn mowing and cleaning gutters and delivering papers, it seems like a lot of that has gone away, which is kind of a bummer because that's a great introduction into being successful in strength, in business, and in life in general. And it's not there anymore.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Good. And I've got young kids, so it's I guess what my wife and I do is they don't have their own phones. They can watch TV, but they've got to read for X amount of hours to get TV time. Or
Fantastic.
on one day out of the week, we'll let them play games, but the first they have to do, this list of things that's a daily thing. So it's turning into a habit where they're getting used to reading every day, which is a huge key. And again, that's another part of my origin story is I loved libraries and books and at 11 through 16, after collecting my paper route money, I had to pay downtown and there was a comic book shop right around the corner. So I got to buy my own books. And then there was the main library a block away. So my Saturday was the comic book shop and the library. And I did spend hours and hours in there, which also led me to probably 15 or 16 discovering The Magic of Thinking Big by David Schwartz. So that again was another just my desire to learn more. And I was a super shy and I wanted to know why and how to not be that. So reading those things and all the Zig Ziglar and Norman Vincent Peale books like that at that age, I programmed myself. You know what I mean? That's what I try to tell my kids is if you don't program yourself, you're getting programmed by whatever you're taking in, your friends, your media, whatever's coming at you. Mom and dad can only give you so much. And the majority of your time you spend programming yourself or you will be programmed by someone or something else.
I'm glad you said that because, I think it's funny because I think I grew up, I loved books as well. And I still have, a bookshelf with tons of books, a lot of which I haven't even quite gotten to yet. But it's like, I want them there for when the time comes that I'm ready to sit down and read them and what have you. And I think people forget that like they spend so much time looking at a screen and just reading and absorbing whatever comes at them, and they don't realize that that sort of a thing has an impact on them. And it's like, if you were to change that, and again, I think Zig Ziglar's awesome. I used to listen to like all of his old talks. Like on repeat, I loved his stuff. Norman Vincent Peale's another great example. They're just like you mentioned. There are Jay Abraham, tons of other just awesome influences, but they're not what's super popular on TikTok or Instagram or any of these other places. So it's super easy to just get like swept away by frivolity, and it's really up to you. In the same way that you exercise so that you can mold yourself to look the way that you want, it's also up to you to mold your thinking the way that you want. If you're just being preoccupied with celebrity gossip and other
right,
super easy to stop focusing on how to mold yourself and get better and better, just little, like, bit by bit, day after day. Now here's another thing I wanted to ask you about, because I think you had an intro to the world of strength training in a field similar to what happened to me. It was martial arts. Sounds like you got into martial arts training. That was kind of, I had done like some lifting and stuff like that as a youngster with the crappy equipment that I had, at my parents' house. But then I got into martial arts training as a teenager, and it sounds like it was very similar for you. So what resources were available to you as like small town kid? I'm guessing there wasn't like a martial arts studio on every corner. This was probably similar. You had to go through the books and magazines and stuff like that.
Yeah. For like, when I was 16 and after was like bodybuilding for me. Subscription to all the magazines, Arnold, numero uno. He was huge, reading his Education of a Bodybuilder book and seeing his mindset and how he saw these things and then made them happen with extreme determination, but in belief in himself. So bodybuilding for quite some time, until you started to see things like, all right, the name bodybuilding's awesome, but then you're seeing this excessive culture and these awesome guys dying at a super young age, and we know why. They're destroying their bodies. So it was kind of it was disturbing and sad when you have a great platform, but you have all this just the worst of the worst, the excessiveness and destroying your insides just to look a certain way. That just didn't seem like the proper thing to do. And so when I started my martial arts, I was older. I was probably 20, 26, 27. I just started a job as a second shift. So I started a noon class of Taekwondo, and that led me into stretching. And Pavel spoke of the old time, ways of strength, and those things made sense. Being functional and having fun and being healthy, which is what I've always really just wanted to be, was healthy and strong. So that led to the Brooks Kubik dinosaur training book, where he had talked about the old school guys again, and they would do grip stuff and different feats of strength just for fun, because they could. They weren't just training to look pretty or big just for sake of doing that, but they were functional human beings. Mm-hmm. And that was definitely a turning point for me. And also cutting wood as a youngster for my grandpa. So I knew that feeling too. And that's just something you don't get. A lot of the swinging things, just like kettlebells, they complement everything else. Regular training, like you said, it ties your body together, but it makes your body smarter. It makes it work as a unit, which again is a lot of not really something that's shared every day. It's I know you got to specifically train a muscle, and we're still in this bodybuilding type mindset for strength and health, when there's so much more and better and more efficient ways to be stronger and just be ready for life. And we need that today. We really need it.
Big time. It's interesting you point this out too, because I think everybody's kind of introduction to the world of physical culture in most cases is through bodybuilding, because you've got these ubiquitous glossy magazines on every storefront. You could be in the airport, you could be at Barnes and Noble, you could be anywhere, where books or magazines are sold, and you see it. So like, to you, that is like the ultimate in, in transforming your body. And it's one way of doing it. But, a
Yeah.
mutual friend of ours, Jamie Lewis, when he was on my show not too long ago, we talked about something he mentioned in one of his books about body weight training, was that at one point there was not this like separation between all the disciplines. It was like you did bodybuilding and calisthenics and barbell lifting, whether it was, powerlifting style or Olympic lifting. It was all just something that you did in the pursuit of trying to become better. And then at some point or another, it just got, somebody put barriers between all these different things. And then you were either a barbell guy or a body weight guy or a bodybuilding guy. And it's like, people forgot that, oh, you could do all these things and you could actually be like way cooler. But
Yes.
but I couldn't agree more. So many people don't realize that their body's supposed to work together like in one solid unit, as opposed to you're just going to do your quads. You're going to sit down and you're going to do some extensions, and then you're going to, flip the script and you're going to just bend your knees instead of extending them. And they don't really understand what it's like to get everything to work all together. And when they do, like you pointed out, it's like a revelation, like Brooks Kubik talking about these things, or Pavel. It's like people, I think, instinctively understand why that's more valuable, if that's where they come from originally, is from the complete opposite end of the spectrum with bodybuilding. It's like, that makes far more sense that you wouldn't sit in a machine like, some science fiction, like Ripley and Aliens 2, in that machine, like,
Yes,
killing
yes.
the alien. Yeah, exactly. So I couldn't agree more. It's very cool to hear that.
And it's marketing, right? That's people's first reaction to, oh, that's what health and strength is, because marketing. They've got money to put this image, and behind that image is a massive industry of supplements. And so now, to look like this, you must use our supplements. You must take our caffeine loaded powders. You must take our protein powders if you want this strength and health.
Yeah.
It's like, no, man, you don't.
Yeah, it's like you ask people too, like, okay, do you real people, you agree people got really strong in the past? Yeah, okay. Well, they didn't have any of these things, so how did they do it? And it's like a light bulb turns on. They're like, well, I didn't even think about that. It's like all these things might be nice, but they're kind of luxuries. And they'll be far more luxurious if you have a solid foundation of stuff that you actually kind of really need to do in real life, as opposed to, the stuff that makes you look pretty for a magazine.
Yeah, and I found, not against supplements at all. But it is one of those mental things where it's almost so woven together that you must have one without the other. So if you're not using them, you almost stop training. It's like, and that could be a problem. It's just a boost, and really it's all up here. You can get through things, but that should be the message, more than taking, but just doing.
Exactly. Moving on to another topic, I remember one of the things that you'd mentioned that you had written to me earlier was about how you got interested in actually like physically making things with your hands. And so we've got now this kind of like cool background, understanding your origin stories, how you got interested in all of this stuff to begin with. But then the other part that I think makes what you do especially unique is that you can create implements that help you to get crazy strong, and that are in many ways sort of connected with the traditions of the past in terms of, strength training and weightlifting and things like that. So how did you get started making things? Most people have a hard time, I think, making a paper airplane. So the fact that you can make things out of iron and steel just blows their mind. So please tell me a little bit about that. Like, was this something that you also did in your earlier years? Was this something you started doing in your later years, or what was the story with that?
It's looking back, it's really awesome, I suppose, because this started very early. When I was 16, after I was done for my paper out, I got a job at a machine shop as their draftsman. So I'm this 16-year-old high school kid drawing blueprints for this company. Surrounded by metal, I have a passion for anything strength and health. I started making my own stuff at that time as well. So at 18, 19, I was making pulley machines and leg presses, flat benches and preacher benches. I was making all that stuff because I could, and I wanted my own equipment to make. So it was really just a yeah, I don't know what you call it, but it was that opportunity where I had drafting in junior high, really enjoyed it and took to it. And so my drafting teacher suggested me to this company, and boom, here I am working at a machine shop. A couple years later, I started getting into the metalworking part of it, and started taking apprenticeship classes, which is a 4 year. You learn all about everything metal, welding, grinding, machining, and then got my journeyman machinist card and started. I kept making stuff. I would actually make things and sell them through the newspaper at the time to help pay rent. So yeah, this is early early on, 16 to my 19, and it's just never stopped.
What was the first piece of fitness equipment that you ever made?
I believe it was my power rack. I wanted a power rack, and it was the first time I TIG welded. I had sawed everything, cut everything, put holes in it, made the pins. Yeah, it was a power rack.
Very cool. And when was the first time that you got like a request? Like, did like any of your friends come over and they're like, "That's a cool power rack. Where did you buy it?" And you're like, "Oh, I didn't buy it. I made it." And they're like, "Oh, can you make me one?" Like, was that kind of how that got started, where you started making it for other people, or was it similar to what you mentioned earlier? Like, "Oh, I gotta make rent, so let me just see if there's other things people would want to buy."
Yes, I didn't have many friends. I'm a pretty solo lone wolf guy, and I like that. So no, back then, just like two buddies that I would train with. We'd go to gym, or we would go to one of our houses and work out. Yeah, the selling of it just solely came from okay, I need to make some more money to pay rent or buy other things that I want to buy, and then just put an ad in the paper. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, that was the original like Facebook Marketplace. You know,
Right,
there's actually a
right.
physical paper that you had to put an ad in.
No
Uh,
pictures, just this tiny little sentence or
of course,
paragraph.
and
Yeah, it's just words.
people just had to trust you. Yeah, because you had to pay like by word, right? Wasn't it like?
You did,
Yeah.
yes.
I wonder if anybody ever got the idea, like, you know what, I'm just gonna put like an underscore in between the words so that it's technically all one word, but I'll get like 5 or 10 words in there. That's probably a different question for maybe for a newspaper publisher, but um,
Absolutely.
now, so how much of your own equipment is stuff that you've made versus stuff that you've purchased? Is it like a pretty even split, or is it one way
It's
or the other?
probably an even split. I'm also one of those guys that collects stuff and is always looking. So if I see something on the marketplace, I'll get it, or I just come into these probably 15 years ago, a guy had an ad for something, and he actually had a storage unit full of weight equipment that he just wanted to get out of there. And so I, I rented a U-Haul, and I got it all out of there and brought it back to my my place.
It's amazing. It's got to be like a grown-ups like playground there. Just tons of like weight
Yeah,
equipment and
because in my brain, there's nothing that says, "Hey, you have too much."
yeah.
There's never too many books, and there's never too many weights.
Yeah, I think especially if these are things that you really love, it's like, look, I may not use this every week, so I don't need to worry about being minimalist about it. But when I need it, it's going to be there, you know, whether it's a book or a piece of equipment or, you know, whatever it may be.
It's
Uh,
yeah, it's the promise. It's the promise of what can come either from reading that book or using that piece of thing. Yeah. I
exactly.
know the potential's there. You just got to do it.
Exactly. Exactly. Uh, you mentioned something earlier that I thought was very cool too, and I think that the listeners would be very intrigued by is that you participated in the first ever tactical strength challenge in like very early 2000s. Do you remember the exact year? Was it 2000, 2001?
I was trying to look that stuff up. I think I've got an old high eight videotape of one of them where Pavel was there, and I think it was
Wow.
actually on my anniversary day. And my wife wasn't with me at the time, so he wished her a happy anniversary. But I'll have to look. But it was definitely early 2000, and that didn't go very many years either, because after that one, I think I was training for it again for the following year, and it was either the second or the third one, and then it was canceled because there just wasn't enough participants at the time. But what was awesome was I was training for that, and on the same month there was a Highland Games, local Highland Games. Never competed before in them, so I'm like, oh, this looks like fun. I'll sign up for it. And I did, and I took second place in the novice division. So there was amazing carryover with the kettlebell work to Highland Games.
Yeah, it seems like in the early days, Highland Games was kind of like a big crossover thing with kettlebells because I remember I would hear like, I didn't get into kettlebells until maybe like 2000, it was 2008 for sure, but I had never heard of the Highland Games before. I think maybe I had like a vague idea that it was, people throwing massive
Telephone
things.
poles. Yeah.
Exactly. And but yeah, it was interesting because it was like that arm wrestling and like other really, hardcore activities that just people who did kettlebells were either drawn to these things or vice versa. People who did these things were drawn to kettlebells. Martial arts is another great example.
Right.
Did you start to notice like you show up first time ever, get second place in the novice division? People are like, how are you training? Because you got second place and you've never done this before. Was that were like people were they amazed, or was it just kind of like, another day at the office for them, or what?
Yeah, I don't know. It was probably another day at the office. So those events are fun and the camaraderie is good. Um, yeah, training wise, I like most of them just do specific implements at the time, depending on who the competitor is and how serious you are. But yeah, nope, I don't think I got any questions about that.
Well,
They
then,
probably wondered, but maybe just didn't ask. I don't know.
yeah, I suppose. Yeah. Because that's kind of like a hardcore event. People are not likely to fawn over the new guy who shows up and,
Yeah,
crushes it.
and
They're like,
I think there were some guys that have been trying for years to do. Then this dude comes in.
yeah. Well, that would be the first thing I'd do. I would want to be like, what are you doing? Because I've done this 5 years in a row and I never get past like 10th place. But ego kind of keeps some people from
Absolutely,
stepping
yeah.
upward. And yeah. On the topic of kettlebells, you mentioned too that you used to make your own kettlebells before they were widely available for purchase.
Yes, I would. Oh, yeah, before you could find him anywhere. Before it may have been before Dragon Door went, with manufacturing them even. But I was getting these stainless steel globes, and then stainless steel tubing and cutting and mitering and welding the handle together, and then onto the globe, and then filling them with lead.
Wow.
It was insane. I don't know how many thousands of pounds I was melting and doing. Zacharias Salazar?
Yeah, of course.
He's got, I think he has one of my 100-pound ones that I made at the time. And it's freakish because 100-pound lead kettlebell is not as big as what a actual cast 100-pound will be. It's mind blowing the difference, how small it is, but how heavy it is.
Wow. Yeah, I guess people forget that. I mean, I don't think much about it because I'm just used to cast iron. So it's like, okay, it's like a big unwieldy object. But what are we talking like half the size for a lead shot or a melted lead filled one, or
Definitely an inch or two smaller in circumference than
wow.
or diameter than the cast ones. Yeah.
Like deceptively difficult to lift.
Deceptively. Are you familiar with the inch dumbbell?
Oh yeah.
Okay. Those I think are 9.5 inch solid cast, and that thing weighs 172 pounds. I made one for my buddy Adam Glass out of 8-inch globes, completely filled with lead, and it was like 230 or 240 pounds. So you're 60, 70 pounds heavier, but smaller.
Wow. And Adam could probably lift it too. He's crazy.
He did, yes. He is just the epitome of he's a machine. That's what he
Yeah.
is.
He's somebody that I would love to meet one day because I've heard all these stories. I was in Texas a couple months ago for the old school strongman training workshop under Dave
Oh,
Whitley.
were you really? Nice? Because I was at the first one of those. I don't know if I wrote that in. Yeah.
No, it was such a cool thing. Yeah, I had like a ton of fun. I learned a ton. And Dave told me, he's like, Adam might be able to make it, but he lived, I think he lived a couple hours away. So it wasn't like, oh, 15 minutes down the road, sure, I'll swing by. It was like, you'd have to kind of plan for it. So I was hoping to be able to meet him because I've seen these videos. I remember seeing a video of him at an RKC like ages ago, and I think he had, I don't know what it was like maybe a nail, like a red nail or something like that. And he was trying to
Yeah.
encourage people how to bend it, and like they were trying. These were big, muscular dudes who just couldn't make
Yeah.
it budge. And then
Yeah.
he's just like bent it with no problem. Um, yeah, unbelievable strength. And I know he's been at it for years and years and years. So
Yeah.
it doesn't
It's just
surprise me.
he's like a Terminator.
Yeah. Only scarier.
Yes. Yeah. 2008 was the first old time strongman university, and Dennis put it on. And man, Chris Ryder was there, Mike Gillette. I got a picture somewhere. A lot of that was awesome. That was so much fun.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's cool to see that these guys are still doing this stuff too. Cause I don't follow Chris Ryder very closely, but I had somebody on my podcast a couple of episodes ago who works with him. And, he's like, I think he's one of his students. And yeah, I mean, the guy just sounds like he's crazy strong. I've seen videos of him just doing insane stuff. I
Yeah.
haven't kept up recently, but it's great to hear that he's still doing it. And it's also crazy to think just how many people used to be able to do that stuff back in the day. Now it's kind of like
Right.
a niche
Right.
thing. But it used to be like, oh, I'm
Yeah.
gonna go to the local carnival, and they just, there's a guy from, the one town over. He's like, oh, I'll just tear decks of cards in half and bend these horseshoes, and it was like, obviously it was still tough to do back then, but there were a lot more people doing it.
A lot more people, probably more laborious jobs. So their grip and wrist strength was there because of what they did all day long.
Mm-hmm.
And that's hard to beat.
Yeah.
Doing something for 8 hours.
Yeah, well, you know what? It reminds me of what we were talking about earlier too. It's like they weren't like, okay, in 3 months I'm gonna be able to bend this horseshoe and I'm gonna periodize. It was just like they did stuff every day that was just, it was labor intensive, but it was also something that was beneath their ability to do, meaning they weren't working at 100% every single day. It was something that was manageable and day in, day out for hours and hours at a time. And of course, sure enough, they had these incredible adaptations. It's not that much different from getting up, riding your bike for, an hour or two to deliver papers and stuff like that, with the exception of course, you're probably not going to tear a deck of cards in half after riding your bike for a few hours. But you get the idea of like showing up every day, doing something, just putting in the work and focusing on the process as opposed to the outcome. And then the outcome's still there. And I think that strongman stuff is a perfect example of that.
Absolutely. And there's magic in that, in doing those mundane things. I don't know at what point everybody or a lot of people think that they need to be entertained and always just engaged all the time doing. That's just not how life works. Boring. People call training boring. It's like, I know you work at a job somewhere and it's not a carnival, so you're not having fun this whole time. Why are you putting this on training as that's boring or you don't have time? It's not, and it shouldn't be.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there is something to be said about wanting to enjoy the process, but some people look at it, they look for it in the wrong way, as though it's supposed to be like their training's got to be this mile-a-minute thrill ride. It's like, you should enjoy the process, but it's not the same thing as watching a movie. Like, like if you were to sit, and I think that's probably why people binge on Netflix and they're watching hours of TV every night. It's like, look, if you're already doing that, don't ask for your training to give you more of that. Okay. You've got plenty of it. Just, be disciplined, be patient, and just watch what happens in a couple months.
Absolutely. Or just while you're binging, do something. Do just some small things. Yeah, grip training's great for binge watching TV. You're just sitting there.
Absolutely.
Why not sprinkle these things in throughout the whole binge session?
Well, it's funny you mentioned that too, because I did that just yesterday. For instance, like one of the things that I want to start doing more of is like the old time, strongman grip feats. And I really like tearing decks of cards. And so I want to make it the sort of a thing that I can do without needing much of a warm up. Like I can do it now, but it's if I have a warm up, it makes it a lot easier. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to do some stuff that helps to just get my grip stronger in general. And so I went out, I bought like a 20-pound bag of rice, poured it in a 5-gallon bucket that I bought from Lowe's. And I started doing the rice bucket stuff. So I was watching an old episode of The Twilight Zone yesterday. And that's my, I try to combine hobbies as much as I can. So I'm
I do as well.
Yeah. So I'm a student of Italian. And so I found a channel that has all the old original like anthology of the Twilight Zone translated into Italian or dubbed into Italian. So was watching that. I was doing the grip stuff, and then when the episode
Nice.
was over, I went, tore some decks of cards. And it was like, it made it easier too, because this is the thing is I wanted to skip over it. I was like, maybe I'll just do it tomorrow when I have more time. And then I
Right.
thought, I can make the time. I just, I got to stop because I was in that same mindset. I want to be entertained instead of,
Yes. Yeah.
you know what I mean? And so, yeah, all you got to do is just put a little effort into figuring out how you can work around that and then man up, as maybe Joe Weider might have told you in one of those packets back in the day. And yeah, it works like a charm. There's lots of stuff that you can do even while you're, vegging out in front of the TV.
Absolutely. The rice bucket. Yeah, I've got a sand bucket video that's gotten over like 1 million views on YouTube. Yeah.
Wow.
I don't know why, but that's one
That's
for some reason that video went crazy.
that's the other thing too, is I think that once people like get interested in the idea of training using like odd implements and then getting a lot more out of it than what they would expect, kind of like,
Yeah.
oh, I can just lift this big ugly kettlebell and next thing I know, I'm like hitting second place in the novice division. And like then they're like, well, what else could I do that would get me crazy strong that I don't need a $15,000 piece of machinery for, in a gym 30 minutes away. It's the only one in the tri-state area that has this thing. It's like, well, yeah, you could just put together stuff like that. It like doesn't cost you much of anything. I think it would be cool to do something like that where you're like, okay, well, let me just see like what can happen with my grip if I do rice bucket, and then maybe when that gets easy, I try sand bucket, and just go from there and just see
Yeah.
what happens. And most
It's like
people,
the monks. You go up, steel shot, then you're dipping your hand in a thing of barbed wire.
I got a while before I get there, but
Yeah.
yeah, but that would be awesome. Yeah, I think like that's, let's say rice, sand, gravel, something like that. You'd have some terrifying hands for sure.
And these things they don't take a whole lot of time consumption, and it's stuff just like the 9-minute kettlebell thing. That's not asking a lot. You know
Yeah,
what I mean? It's getting people to see that you don't need this massive amount of time. You just need small blocks when you can. Well,
exactly.
preferably make the time to do these small blocks. That's what like the sledgehammer training and smashing. It's you do that for 5-10 minutes, go do something else because you're ready. You don't need
Oh
to
yeah.
do that for 30-45 minutes and kill yourself. That's really the secret and the magic is you have to first get your mind to understand that if you do a little bit, and a little bit is whatever you're able to do at the time. Don't try to do things you used to do in high school until you're back to that level. Just start doing something and then go from there.
Exactly. And the big thing too, really think is to enjoy the process and not think about like if you're always looking, at the horizon, it's one thing to look and be like, okay, that's where I'm going. So I know the direction that I want to head, but no matter what, you've always got to put one foot in front of the other. So everything is happening one step at a time. So if you approach it like that, just one day at a time, one exercise session at a time, and you're not obsessed over, oh, but I still am so far away from, that star on the horizon, you'll enjoy it a lot more. That's where the entertainment will come from, is like, I get to like, I'm looking at it right now. I've got like a couple of different things that I have on a cork board where every day that I do it, I just put a green check mark on it,
Yeah.
So it might be like, creating content or whatever. I have a certain amount, like a minimum that I have to do. When that's done, bam. I don't think like, how many leads am I going to get from this? How many, likes am I going to get from this? How many, whatever. It's just all I'm focused on is getting the check mark. Everything else happens the way that it's supposed to.
Yeah, and get those check marks every day, and that's the process, and that's what works. Let
Exactly.
it happen. I
Exactly.
mean, and as far as the mental and physical training, I mean, what's stopping people from, they know the benefits of it? Is it just because it's not an immediate thing where they're okay now, they're living and breathing, but they know what's coming if they continue to neglect both of those areas.
I think
It's an interesting thing with our society, isn't it? Where that is not the social message that is getting out, or they don't even want to put it out for some reason.
Yeah. Yeah, I think from having trained so many people over the years, I think a lot of it, what it comes down to is number one, intellectually, they understand that, okay, if I don't do something, I'm going to be unhealthy. But they don't understand it on an emotional level. And all decisions are an emotional decision, and they're then backed up with logic. And
Yeah, yeah.
so many people, it's like there was a guy, Jim Camp, who was called the world's most feared negotiator. He died a few years ago, but I've got one of his books. It's called No. That's it. It's just called No. And his whole thing is that negotiation begins with the word no, not with yes. There's nothing to
Mhm.
negotiate if they say yes. So when they say, what you want to do is get to know, because that is how you know uh, what you need to do next in order to try to get the negotiation to go well. And
Yeah.
his big thing was that vision drives decision. So, we think a lot about, if you were trying to convince someone to exercise, you might think of telling them the benefits, like, oh, you're going to feel better, you're going to look better, all this other stuff. And all that's true, but and they might already know these things, and it's not enough to get them to want to make any changes. But if you say, well, what's going to happen when you can't, wash yourself anymore? Or who's going to
Yeah.
take care of you when, your caretaker's out of town and you fell on the floor and they're not going to be back till Monday and it's Saturday evening? And so, and of course, this is going to depend on the level the person's at. But that's the thing, is if people can see just how bad it would be if they don't do anything, and then to understand how little they actually have to do to start moving the needle in the right direction,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
it
And
really convinces them.
they've got to be at that place too where, oh, maybe they're noticing a few aches and pains, because if they don't, then yeah, it's falling on deaf ears. But if they're starting to, which it seems to me like a lot of people are there so much earlier than usual, where it's not too hard to get them now, just to get them over the fact that well, I'm going to die someday. Well, true. You want it to be a slow, long, not being able to play with your kids and grandkids type of death, or would you like to live?
Exactly, exactly. And I think once people can understand, first of all, I have a vision of like, oh, how much better or how much worse things could be, because people are motivated differently. But then the other thing is getting them to understand just how little it really takes to start to move the needle is huge. I remember, you talked about Adam Glass. I think I read something that he wrote on a blog many years ago. I don't know if he still has his blog up. I wish I could track down what it was, but he said, people don't understand just how powerful like doing anything is. And I'm paraphrasing, but he said, like you can get people to completely reverse 10 years of neglect in like 9 months of just consistent training. It's like that's light speed if you think about it. It's not going
Yeah,
to take 10 years to reverse the 10 years. It might just take a few months, and before they know it, they're like, I'm doing stuff I couldn't have done when I was 30 or when I was 40. And
yeah,
they're just in incredible shape, and they're not training 6 hours a day. It might be 20-30 minutes a couple days a week, and it's just life changing.
yeah. It's that consistency, the magic of consistency, and just making better choices and decisions.
Absolutely. And speaking of making better choices, most people are probably not following you, and that's not a very good choice. And I think that they need to make better choices as well. And so where can people follow you online, like your website, social media, all that other stuff? I want people to follow you and hopefully buy some cool piece of equipment from you, because like I said, I'm feeling like I need to do a little shopping as well.
Yes, yes. It's been such a fun journey, and everything's just been about me enjoying and making and hustling and raising kids. So my marketing part has really not been there. It's just been a chaotic ride of posting pictures here and there. So my website's strongergrip.com. I'm working right now with someone to get a better vision of what I'm doing now. Strongergrip.com. I started in 2006, right before the old time strongman. It was kind of a Brooks, the dinosaur training hit. I got all these ideas. I started making grip stuff, putting them on eBay. Then I came up with strongergrip.com. Everything was focused on grip strength and wrist strength. And since then, there's been so many other things. So So what's happening is I'm coming out with Ryan J. Pitts Presents. That is me and all the ideas that I have, one being stronger grip. I've got the Barbarian Army, serial killer strength, recycled strength, all these branches. It's my own little universe of strength and fitness, and each category has its own kind of special tools. So hopefully once that's done, there will be a clear vision and people will kind of understand the chaos that's been happening. But on Instagram, it's Stronger Grip Metal Master. Also have Ryan J. Pitts Presents on Instagram. Facebook, I have a Stronger Grip page. What else? I've got all the other ones too, but I'm trying to. My YouTube channel is at Stronger Grip.
Nice.
Yeah.
Folks, I highly, highly recommend that you go follow him. He's got a ton of very cool stuff and the kind of stuff that you wish you would have thought of yourself. But you can know that you are not alone because now what could have been your idea is now in the ether, getting people stronger, and it's up to you. Take the next step and follow him. Follow him on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. You're not going to regret it. There's some of the coolest content you're ever going to see on there. And some really cool homemade equipment as well. I saw your Captain America shield the other day. I think you had a video of that.
That was an Olympic plate that I got, but the shield is a plate loadable shield. So you can get my shield and put 25-pound, 45-pound, and it takes up to 3 plates. So 3 45s or 3, but it fits right on your forearm. So it feels awesome. It's got a forearm strap for certain exercises, or you can take it off and do other things with it. Probably one of my coolest new devices for sure.
Yeah, no, that's super cool. And anybody who's a Marvel fan, I think that's a must. You got to get that. Yeah. Probably also Thor's hammer wouldn't be a bad idea. And I'm sure you've got plenty of that too. So very cool. Well, Ryan, thank you very much for coming on the show.
Yes, thanks for having me, Alex.
And folks, as always, have fun and happy training.